we're not only playing for the fourth quarter right now, we're really playing for Q1 and Q2 of next year.
100%.
And if you're not looking at the long game in your business and understanding all this stuff's happening here, and the Fed's going to play out how it plays out over the next couple months, and there's going to be opportunities for sure you can close right now, but really all the work you do, forget even 90 days. It might be a 6 to 12 month payoff. If you got that mindset, you're going to win. And that's what knowledge brokers are doing right now. If you are not getting educated about current real estate market conditions, whether you're a real estate agent, you're in title, insurance, mortgages, you're an attorney, you're a financial advisor, you're doing yourself and your clients a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole, and I'm here with the baddest bitch in real estate, Lisa Chinatti. And Lisa, we got some CPI data to talk about. We've got maybe some of the experts foreseeing a Fed pivot. We've got some purgatory questions about buyers that are renting right now and home buyer sentiment. But let's start with the CPI data first. I find this is the stuff that the market reacts to the most. And we saw the consumer price index, it climbed to 3.2% through July, the first acceleration in 13 months. And you really have to dive in and give this a closer examination, because we know that the Federal Reserve always looks at the core CPI data. So they take out core inflation, remove food and energy prices, and that core inflation rose 4.7% on a yearly basis. And now we're seeing that Fed officials, after lifting the key federal funds rate at the last meeting, this is going to impact it again. And the index for shelter looks to be the largest contributor. So housing prices, right? Housing prices and rental prices. Shelter accounted for 90% of the total increase in all of these items. So what do you make of all this? Is this going to bode well for the next Fed meeting? What should real estate agents and people in the real estate industry be thinking about right now with this new data?
Well, I think it's multiple fold, right? Yesterday, rates went up a smidge across the board. I think we hit, what was it, 7.2? Did we?
That's what we saw, 7.25. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that there's definitely some stuff that I think, one, real estate agents need to be prepared to talk to consumers. I fielded personally probably about 10 or 15 calls at end of day yesterday from consumers in the market kind of asking what it meant. So I think, one, being able to understand it. I think being able to explain some of the data about the areas that rose, but also there were some notable areas where inflation fell. I'm going to pull them out here. Let's see. So rents rose 0.4% in July. So, But the thing to understand with rents, and I know we've talked about this before, is that it only talks about rents in place and not asking rents. And so being able to understand the lagging data on that it really is maybe a little bit of an unfair metric, because what we're not seeing is what's actually happening with vacancies right now and the asking rents for homes that aren't currently rented. There were a bunch of things that fell. I'm trying to find them here. Might be in the wrong spot, but airline tickets fell, right? Travel fell. What were the ones?
The index for lodging away from home decreased 0.3% in July after falling a full 2% in June. So that's travel, right? And I think I was talking to an agent in the Hamptons, and they were saying that people are not even renting those properties for the summer anymore, because you can go have this lavish like European vacation for the same price.
Yep.
And that really impacts housing in a lot of ways, because a lot of these homeowners count on that money to carry the properties throughout the summer, knowing how much a property in the Hamptons or the Jersey Shore, any other really vacation destination happens. So I thought that was pretty notable.
100%. So here were the ones that fell. Airline fares, used cars and trucks, medical care, and communications were all among the areas where we saw decreases. The ones that increased were shelter, motor vehicle insurance, education, and recreation in general. So some interesting ones in that respect. Medical care, not too shocking, right? I think we've kind of settled out a bunch from the factors that caused major increases. Used cars and trucks, I think we're seeing it across the board that the demand for those has started to decrease as the production lines have caught up from all of the stuff that caused the shortfalls that were going on in there. Airline fares, I think, ties into exactly what you mentioned with the vacation rental homes. And I think the airlines are doing some catch up. So shelter, again, kind of like you said, is the biggest contributor to the monthly rising 4.4% month over month.
Well, and a lot of people, and we've talked about this about Barry Sternlight on the pod here, the First American Deputy Chief Economist, Odetta Cushy. So that First American's obviously a huge title insurance company. They're one of the big four. They underwrite most of the policies. This person is saying there's more shelter inflation deceleration in the pipeline this year, which bodes well for a continued slowdown in inflation. And then according to some data from Apartment List, monthly rent growth already peaked this year, and average rents fell in August from where they were last year, announcing the first year-over-year decline since early in the pandemic. So I think when you see that start to happen here, there's that's going to actually put some pressure on, you would think, the Fed to slow their roll with the next rate hike that they're saying may happen. No one said any of this is going to happen yet. We've got until the end of September. And even the Bright MLS chief economist, Lisa Sturdivant, I'm probably butchering her name, they're not the result of the Fed's action, but rather the consequence of more new residential construction coming to the market. And vacancy rates are rising. So all these things are starting to come to a head here. And we've been saying this for months because we're in the market. We're knowledge brokers. We're studying the real-time data that comes in. Unfortunately, the government doesn't operate that way. They use the lag data, and most real estate data is lag 60 to 90 days at best, because you sell a home today, Lisa, or someone on your team sells a home, or someone down here sells a home. You're not seeing that sold price actually get recorded until 60 to 90 days, especially with the leasebacks and the extended closings that sellers are negotiating, which are a little abnormal compared to the pre-unicorn market in 2020. So all these factors are happening right now, and it's making the decision-making, I see, a lot more complicated for the Fed moving forward with their September meeting coming up, because there's a lot of mixed signals. So you're saying you're in these conversations, you're coaching up the folks you work with. I'm doing the same. We're always talking about this. How are you helping them educate consumers? What's the message a knowledge broker needs to bring to a consumer right now saying, I'm unsure, I'm uncertain, I'm seeing this, and these aren't headlines, these are real data points. So how are you navigating that, and how are you coaching your people to navigate it?
I mean, it's open, honest conversations. I think it's going to understand the consumer's need, right? Or their wants. And there's always going to be a need for housing. I don't think we can push consumers into feeling comfortable. I think that we can provide some clarity around historic averages and things that we've seen historically. I think a big part of it is being able to lead with empathy. And we talk about this all the time through absolutely every part. I think when looking at data, I think a lot of the conversations that are still kind of bubbling up are we going to be in for a decrease in housing rates? I was actually just sitting out on my sales floor before I walked in here to film it. And somebody came up to me and was asking me, what are my predictions? And again, I go back to being able to understand the uniqueness of your own individual market and what are the factors that are going to, right? The conversation went like this. Well, if rates start to fall, then all these people are going to come out of the woodwork to start selling and upgrading, because the pain point of being in that home for a period of time, like you and I were talking about it this morning, those 33-year-olds, right?
Yes.
And that this is going to be a great segue into grinding through the rest of the year.
Yes.
You like that?
We've done this before, and it's evident.
Clearly. So, but understanding, so the question mark became with all of those, 30-something-year-olds, where the pain of being in their place is it's going to grow, right? They might be able to kind of last through it while rates are still high. But when those rates do drop, and I think we all believe that at some point there is going to be some relief and we're going to see rates drop back down, is there going to be so much inventory that floods the market that we're going to see a decrease in prices? And again, leaning back into understanding the uniqueness of each market is absolutely critical. So I was looking at the community where my office is here. It's a town with maybe about 35,000 residents. So it's a decent sized community. And so far this year, we've sold 120 single family homes in this town of 35,000 residents. Demand far outpaces 120 homes. If we all of a sudden had 5 times that inventory come on the market, we still can't keep up with the demand for a community of 30,000 residents. And that's the key right there.
Well, and I got to give credit to Byron's BFF, Ricky Caruth. He put out some content about this. We actually showed it to our team at our listing conversion workshop that we run every 2 weeks, because to me, I think people just got to get focused on trying to bring inventory to the market if you want to have a successful business. That's part of the grind. We're going to get into that. And around that, it's, everyone wants this like now result when you're in real estate. I can give you some of my call numbers personally from this week, and I've been getting my ass kicked. So I'll be the first.
Ditto, dude. Ditto.
And it's like, I have a skill level that I would argue is strong. It can always get better, but I've been doing this a while. I practice it. It's hard because the first week I started doing this to really help our organization, there was some cleanup, and you can see those low hanging opportunities, and you're like, wow, I can't believe this didn't happen. Let me jump on this.
Right.
But then you really get into it. And this is like Seth Godin's The Dip. You ever study this? And this is really important.
One of my favorites. Yes.
And it's so true, right? So, and maybe we can link it to he has like a really cool graphic about this. I'll kick that to Bobby. I'll send it to him. We can put it in the post edit here, where when you start doing something, your motivation just is like really strong, and you're ramping up and up and up. And then all of a sudden it starts to continue to get hard. Like you maybe see some early success, but that early success may be due to luck, which is preparation and opportunity meeting together in the right place. And it might just be that you happen to call the right person at the right time. There's a lot of things that can happen. And then you think it's going to continue that way, but it doesn't. It is a long haul. And this is really the basis of good to great. It's the flywheel, where it's continued action over time versus like the magic bullet. So then what happens is you see all of a sudden you kind of drop, and your morale drops, and you're like, man, I'm getting my butt kicked, or this is hard. And you're actually much closer to success than you realize. And success meaning hitting the objective, because actions lead to objectives. Objectives lead to results. Results are commission checks and sales. So the objectives are setting appointments, getting listings signed, getting buyers under contract. Those are really the key objectives, because you have more control over that than the sale happening. So you're closer to that objective than you realize. But a lot of people, they just fucking quit. They quit right there because they're like, oh, this is too hard. I've been doing it for a week. I've been doing it 2 weeks. You got to test this stuff 90 days. You got to give yourself 90 days minimum to see any sort of result. And if you quit too soon, then you're going to miss out. So I'm going through the same thing right now. And we've talked about this. So to give the listeners an idea, our team is so committed to listings. I am going prospecting, setting appointments, taking our team with me, getting the listing signed. So it's not just classroom anymore. This is real life, observation. It's case studies. And handing it to the team member to service. That's what we're doing, because there's something to that skill. And this reminds me a lot of 2008, 2009, 2010, where that was the game. So the point of this is that consumers are feeling the same way right now. So we talk about this Ricky Caruth story, where he talks about the market almost being like a rubber band. And every day, these 33-year-olds, there's more 33-year-olds in the U.S. than ever before. And I think about what I was like at 33. So I had 2 kids. They were 4 and 2, or 4 and 3, depending on they're 20 months apart. And my wife was pregnant. So think about like just all that going on, and we're in a smaller house, right, than where we've moved to now. Every day when you're in that situation and you're a 33-year-old, you hate where you live more and more. You want to make the next move. And then stack on top of it, this happened to us, and I was obviously a little later in life during the pandemic, when we're stuck in the freaking house, right, all the time, and it's virtual school is going on. People are crying. Our 3-year-old's running around like a mental patient, and I'm trying to keep a business running upstairs. And you know what we want to do? We wanted to get the hell out of there. And that same tension is building right now in the marketplace, and it's going to be tough right now. All the lock-in effect that Lance talked about last week is real. The confusion about the market is real. It's the end of August. A lot of people are on vacation. It's hard to even get someone to meet with you, even when they have intent. So you've got to look at, we're not only playing for the fourth quarter right now, we're really playing for Q1 and Q2 of next year.
100%.
And if you're not looking at the long game in your business and understanding all this stuff's happening here, and the Fed's going to play out how it plays out over the next couple months, and there's going to be opportunities for sure you can close right now, but really all the work you do, forget even 90 days. It might be a 6 to 12 month payoff. If you got that mindset, you're going to win. And that's what knowledge brokers are doing right now. If you want to be the knowledge broker in your marketplace, you need BAMX. It is a curated community of on-demand courses like the world-renowned Tom Toole, the best objection handler in the country, showing you how to handle seller and buyer objections on a consistent basis. Canva courses, how to design your own marketing so you can appeal to people on social media through email and look like a professional. And you get a private community with other like-minded folks like you that want to make their business better. Use the code Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. Get BAMX now. Do yourself a favor and go outwork and out-educate your competition.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And I was having the same epiphany. I know when we kind of talk about what we're doing for Q1 and Q2, and you and I spoke this morning that there's a lot that's going to happen over the next couple of weeks where we're just preparing to kind of ride out the low. There's going to be some quick hits. There's going to be some listings. There's going to be some movement. There's going to be some stuff that happens. But I had this epiphany myself yesterday morning when I was at the gym, and I was like, gosh, again, to your point with not giving up, I work typically on a 90-day attention span. I can grind at something hardcore for 90 days. But what I'll also share, and I think you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit, is I maybe a little bit cocky, a little bit of ego. I think my skill is probably better than average, much like yours. And I'm not used to having to work quite so hard. And it's been challenging. It's been forcing me to do more, to think more, to innovate more, and to really think about things in completely different ways and to reimagine so much of what we've done over the past couple of years, and understanding that we're going to do all of this now, but 100% the results are going to show up in, my gut says it's Q2. I don't even think it's going to be Q1. My gut says everything that we're doing right now until the end of the year is what's going to take shape in the business in Q2. I think you were saying this morning too, looking at what's hit for you, most of it is the stuff that you did in January, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I set an appointment, and who knows if it's even going to go anywhere. I mean, there's intent for sure, but it was an expired listing in January. Today is August 11th, right? That's an 8-month follow-up period just to even get the appointment. And one thing you said there is that you're seeing Q2, and I would argue you need to know the seasonal flow in your market. We've talked about this as well offline, where I'm down in Philadelphia. We've got the Jersey Shore down here, and that's people just go there July 4th till the end of August. It's constant back and forth. How often can I get down? School's out. That's something we do. You don't quite have the same beach destination up in the Boston, Massachusetts area. It's not quite the same, I would argue. I mean, I've been to the Cape. It's a little different, and people still go away. Don't get me wrong. So I also know in our market, January 1st, January is a busy month because the holidays are over. And there's a lot of people that they literally wait until, all right, it's New Year's Day. It's January 2nd. Let's get a real estate agent in here. We're going to do something in the first quarter. And then you see like a little bit of a grind in that February month. I see February dips. And I've seen this. This is 21 years of data. This is not anecdotal. And then all of a sudden, March, it ramps up. And then April, it pops every single year. And you're absolutely right. But if you're doing the work now, you can have a really great first quarter that could lead to a monster second quarter that's going to set up your whole year. And that's the thing people need to realize is that the days of, and you said you're not quite used to working this hard, right? I'm going to give you a stat here that I charted before the show. A lot of agents, they're used to the ball is hit right at them. So you're a baseball fan, Lisa, right? You know, and,
totally.
you know, someone could hit the hardest hit line drive, but if it's right at the shortstop, doesn't matter. And that shortstop could be good or bad. They're in the majors, so they got licensed. They know what to do. If it's hit right at them, usually they're going to catch it. That's what a lot of agents are used to, putting their glove up and catching the sale. The flip side of that is that when we're going now in the marketplace and that you have to have 8 months of follow-up, you have to play this long game that if you're not understanding, it might take. Look at the Harvard Business Review. I mean, there's that chart. I'll send this to Bobby as well. The green and black chart. It talks about lead response time. It's like 6, 7+ attempts, right? Everyone looks at this. So you've got to lean into that. And some of the plays that we're running right now, I hear someone that they're interested in selling. You know what I'm doing? I'm writing a handwritten note to them. And then I'm sending a personalized video. And then I'm calling them again 3 days later. And if it's on my way home, I will go to the post office where their home is. So the note gets delivered the next day and it shows up right in their inbox. And we're doing these things that I didn't used to do, I mean, maybe 2015, 2014. And in 2020, my appointment to sale ratio was 1.1 to 1. So every 1.1 appointments I went on, I did a deal, right? That is a bananas number. And that's because of the market. It's not because I'm some skilled agent. It's because the market was there and I put myself in the right position. Now that number is going to rise up. And I think people need to realize you got to almost throw your stats out from the past 3 years and either look back further, or if you don't have them, start tracking your numbers now and see what they've been like the last 6-8 months, because that's going to be much more realistic.
Yeah, I think in looking at listings, I think some of the other stuff that that agents, knowledge brokers need to be aware of is I think we're going to shift back to the time from signing the contract to going on market. I think we're going to shift back to a time period where you're signing contracts 6, 8, 12 weeks before properties go on market, as sellers need to be much more strategic about repairs and staging and the things that we kind of got away from doing that we didn't need to do when the market was moving so fast are definitely going to come back into play. Hence why I think, even if we're looking at, the leads that we're generating now, right? And this is where I kind of go to the leads that we're generating now, we're going to turn into the appointments, to your point, 6, 8, 12 weeks from now, after we nurture them through to get into the property, signing contracts to protect business. I know you and I spoke about one this morning that you did a very similar thing on, right? We're going to get back into that cadence, and then partnering with our seller clients to understand that the days of having imperfect paint, to not having to have the carpets professionally cleaned or replaced, or the home properly staged and really being able to show in its best light, those days are over. And that whole process is going to take time. I think additionally, being able to get back to really effective marketing strategies are going to be absolutely critical. And some of that marketing work is going to be done before the property is launched on MLS. So I think we're in a much longer lead time from the time that we start taking in leads until the time that we're going to see revenues coming back from those, or from the time that we're doing the activities until we see the reward. Not necessarily because we're not signing the contracts, but I think it's just going to change the game again as we head into the winter markets.
For sure. And so you mentioned what we talked about this morning. So we'll give a lot of credit to my main man, Steve Karpinski. Lisa knows him. He's on our team, killer agent. And we're in our listing training because we're that committed to it. And this is something agents aren't used to. And I think this is really important for the people that want to get better at listings, that are working on their listing knowledge. They want to understand how to protect themselves. So he's meeting with some clients. They want to buy first. So congratulations, you're in the best possible position as a consumer when you can buy first and then sell your home. That's where you want to be. Right. You got the financials to do it. The flip side is he did the right thing and said, hey, let's sit down and have a plan on how this is going to work. And let me show you how much money you're dealing with. And here's how to break it all down. Because let's face it, a lot of novice agents that got into the business the past, they would just say, all right, we'll figure it out. Let's go look at the house. I'll write there's no planning meeting. It takes about a half hour, 45 minutes. Probably the best thing you can do as an agent is have that initial meeting, because you're going to gain loyalty. You're going to show off that you're the local agent of choice. There's a lot of reasons that worked. And the question he had is, well, they're not ready to move. Should I get the listing contract signed? And I'm like, I just said, yes. Like you want to get it signed, because here's what can happen. And we're still in this really high demand market. And this is where the market's pivoting. This happened to me. What happens when someone walks by and sees them getting the house ready? You know what people do now? They ask and they say, well, are you moving? When I was moving out of my house, my neighbor knocked on the door and said, are you selling? And I'm like, well, good thing I'm my own real estate agent, so I don't get screwed here. But, this is literally what happens. And it happened to me with a listing. It was a very high price listing for our market. It was like $1.3 million. I list the house. I'm leaving. The neighbor from across the street knocks on the door and says, hey, my nephew's moving here from California and he's working for me. Can we do a FaceTime tour? Don't put the house on the market. And if I didn't have that contract signed, I would have been screwed. Right. And obviously we worked something out that was more favorable for everybody, because I navigated everything, handled the paperwork, all that. The point is, though, I would have gotten zero. And I worked a year to get this listing, and these folks were relocating, and it was a long-term nurture, just like we're talking about. So if you're not doing that, you're missing the mark, and it's a bad business decision. I mean, you already go there, you win the client, you advise them. Be smart about protecting your business. That's what knowledge brokers are doing. So all this stuff, like this is something that I think we've all done forever, until the market got really hot, and then we started cutting corners, and the listing side is being ignored by far too many people.
Yeah, what I'm going to add to that is one of my pet peeves is when agents sign that contract and then think that they don't still need to treat that consumer as though they're in an active stage of nurture.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a really big reminder that even though the contract is signed and the business is protected, your obligation and your responsibility and your job is to continue the relationship with the client throughout the process with a really great tight set of follow-up and touches and continuing to build the relationship and the rapport. So making sure that understanding protected business doesn't mean that you're not still doing the same level of follow-up and nurture.
For sure. I could not agree more with that. And a great hack that I got this from my mentor when I was my first year in the business is we have an Excel spreadsheet, right? Or now Google Sheets. It's a list of all the active listings that you have, right? It's no different than the top prospects sheet. Although you really got to call these people. It's probably more important to call them because what's the biggest complaint, Lisa, about real estate agents?
We ghost. We're not great at communicating.
Yes, they don't hear from them. Number one, according to NAR. So you've got, and knowledge brokers, what they do is they'll set this expectation at the appointment. Hey, the minimum you're going to be hearing from me is X, whatever it is. I'd recommend 7 to 10 days. I think that's a fair range because sometimes you take a listing in the higher end, there might not be anything happening for a week, right? I mean, that's just how it is. So if you the minimum you're going to hear from me on the phone with a phone call, text and email does not cut it.
Don't count.
And agents rely too heavily on that. You've got to have a conversation. Even if you're leaving a detailed voicemail and they don't call you back and text you, at least there's some inflection there. I would always make sure I'm calling at least once a week. I would block out 2 hours on a Thursday because if I needed a price adjustment, I could get it before the weekend. And I would just sit there, go down the list. I would pick my least favorite seller first and get that out of the way. I'd eat the frog, right?
Yep.
And some of these conversations are going to be more difficult than others. The easier ones, maybe you time block time when you're driving around in your car. That's a great way to gain some traction there. And you've got to know the following stats: number of showings, online views, feedback. And you don't have to, the feedback can be general. I mean, if you get something wonky, you can certainly talk to them about that. I'd be leaning on showing time and realtor.com traffic reports, as well as Zillow saves. Those are all great things to show people and just share them with them. Hey, here's the numbers. Here's what we got. We can tell the marketing's working by this. Here's what the buyers have said, whatever it is, and just communicate it with them and then have a next plan of attack. And sometimes you got to tell them, Lisa, hey, Lisa, right now we've been on the market 7 days. We've had 10 people through. The feedback's been pretty strong and we're getting some great online views. Let's stay the course and see what happens over the next 7 days. And I'm going to continue to work through what I'm doing to generate more activity. Showing traffic's been great. That means the marketing's been working. The feedback is telling us what buyers are thinking. And let's let it play out a little bit. And if you do that, it shows you're on their side and you're not just immediately going for a price adjustment. At the same time, I have this hallucination that a lot of agents don't know how to get price adjustments. And that could cause listings to start to expire and come off the market because of the inability to have tough conversations with sellers and not know what to say. I saw this on a Tom Ferry Elite post today. Someone said, help, my listing's not selling. I need outside the box ideas. And you know what I said? It's time for a price adjustment. Period. And it was like, oh, it's not the price. It's always the price if you're marketing the home correctly. Now, that's an assumption, right? You got to have the right photos, room dimensions, description, video, all that stuff. It's typically the price.
Almost always. And I think, again, kind of tying back into some of the pivots, I think pricing strategy is going to matter. It's fascinating. You just kind of used the benchmark of 7 days. And I think back to 2019 when
it was like 30.
Right. And I think it's going to be so crazy fascinating to watch how that shakes out. You have a suspicion about expired listings. I have a suspicion about canceled listings.
I group them the same. I should say I always, it's one big group for me because something went wrong. Keep going.
I suspect what we're going to see is that there's not just a lack of skill or ability to have conversations about price adjustments. I'm going to guess that not all agents are going to do a great job future pacing sellers to be able to understand the realities of the market, which is going to create a lot of consumer frustration with an agent who didn't set the expectation that 7 days is no longer the norm and that it might be 30 to 45 days, but also understanding 30 to 45 days is still insanely fast, all things considered within a real estate market. But if we don't set that expectation with the consumer up front, I think we're going to find that some consumers are just going to be like, peace, I'm done. I want an agent who can get the job done much faster. So I think we're going to see a lot of broken contracts in terms of cancellations as well.
I feel like this is a listing masterclass we are giving right now for how to deal with listings prior to 2020, because this is all the stuff that, I have these conversations. I'm on the phone and some of them are like, well, this happened. And I'm looking at the photos and it looks like it was an iPhone 5 that took the photo. And there's no, people, good markets create weak skill sets. We've talked about this and on the listing side, especially. So this is going to be really fascinating here. I'd love to hear in the comments where people are getting listings from right now and some of the challenges that they're running into. So drop a comment there. We can maybe answer it next week on the pod. The last piece of data we got here, Lisa, is the buyer sentiment right now. So over 80% of buyers, it's 82% according to the Fannie Mae Home Purchase Sentiment Index, the HPSI for July. 82% of consumers believe it's a bad time to buy a home, up from 78% in June. And that's less than 1 in 5 people in the U.S. as seeing it as favorable. A number of these people see that home prices are going to continue to increase, which means they know what they're talking about. I see no way that prices decrease personally. What do you think about this? And how are you having? So we talked a lot about the listing side, right? And I think this also translates into this goes both ways, because while there's still demand, it's not the same. It's still frothy. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like that really frothy demand we saw maybe 12 months ago. So what do you think about all this? Because it's another mixed bag report with data that's a little all over the place.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, it's not just demand, but it's also looking at supply, right? And I think that becomes the key point that can't be forgotten in here is that demand might be low, consumer sentiment might be low, but supply is equally as low. And so to your point, I do believe that even though here's the other part of it, even if consumers don't necessarily think it's a great time to buy, there is still need to buy. And that need to buy situation is always going to exist. We all make decisions sometimes, right? Like, I don't necessarily want to buy a new car when I get rear-ended, but I still have to buy a new car.
Right? Well, and you talked about the quick hits, right? The qualification process is probably more important than ever right now, because I've seen this even with some of the role play we've been doing with our team around circle dialing, that they assume the right move is always to try to get the appointment. If the person's not that motivated, it may not be the right move, because you can educate them. And I'm not saying don't go meet with somebody. That's not my point. But if they're saying, hey, we're dying in the house, right? I've had this conversation this week. Well, I'd love to come over and tell you what you could sell it for anyway. Like that's a waste of your time. And if the seller is not motivated, then they're not going to move. There's other ways to follow up: notes, videos, property drips. Like those 3 things will work. That's probably all you need. And consistent phone communication, maybe quarterly, might be a good way to look at it. I'd love to hear your feedback on that. On the buyer side as well, this is going to be really interesting to see what happens with rates. And it kind of lays us into Logan Modeshami's take on Housing Wire, where he has the suspicion that some of this inflation data may lead to a Fed pivot, and we may not need this jobless recession because I don't think the jobless rate's coming down. I mean, that has been stronger than ever. It's been kind of wild. So if that doesn't happen and the Fed still pulls back a little bit, when these rates come down, because what goes up must come down. I mean, it's going to happen. I don't know when. I have no idea. When that happens, we talked about that rubber band. It's going to snap. And the people that have been like getting their ass kicked on the phones, having that hand-to-hand comment of just having conversations with people over and over, it kind of reminds me of the 2020 lockdown, where that's all I would do. I felt like I was like working for like Movie Phone or something, like literally on the phone every day, having massive amounts of conversations. I think that's where some of these people that are hating their homes, they're stuck in like renting purgatory, they're going to pull the trigger. But if you're not figuring out how motivated people are and you're not really asking the right questions, you might be doing a lot of time wasting right now.
I think you might also be doing a lot of relationship ruining, if you want my honest take on it.
Tell us more. I want to hear this. This is why Lisa is the baddest bitch in real estate, right here.
To your point with the so many things I want to say right now. With some of those sellers, I listen to a lot of the calls that our agents and our inside sales reps are having. And I listened to one this morning where it's a gentleman who inbounded through a landing page to, potentially sell his home. The call to action was 100% sell your home. the inside sales rep answered the call, started the conversation, and the consumer said, look, I'm going to sell, but I'm not going to sell right now. I just am curious about the value and what repairs need to be done. And the conversation went on, and the consumer said, I'm going to be ready after September 1st. I've got a situation. I don't want to have anybody here until after September 1st. And it's this delicate balance, because I think in that case, could somebody have pushed for an appointment before September 1st in order to potentially, kind of keep the relationship what they perceive to be even warmer? Yes, but I think understanding that when a consumer tells you that there's something going on and there's a reason and the timeline, I think it's going to be even more important than ever to come up with a solid nurture plan to keep the relationship warm at the level that the consumer needs and wants, and then be in place and ready to go when the consumer is. And pushing in those cases, I think, I was reading something the other day, and interesting about the difference between logic and emotion in sales. Oh, it's my 5 a.m. call. I wasn't reading it. I was saying it.
You listened to yourself talk in your backyard and thought you were reading. That's impressive.
Yeah. But understanding that, there's a tie-in, and when you hit on somebody's emotion too hard, you end up with a lot of canceled appointments or a lot of canceled contracts. And so being able to toe the line and find that really great balancing act of meeting the consumer where they're at, but still keeping them engaged is the number one priority that we as agents, knowledge brokers, can and should be doing.
Too many salespeople don't listen to the consumer. I mean, that's what, there's like that 80-20 rule or 70-30, whatever your ratio is. The customer should talk more than you, and you should be asking more questions. And when you talk at somebody and you have verbal diarrhea, which I've seen happen, it's a problem. And you've really got to learn to edit that. That's where practice and role play goes a long way. Now, the other thing that I would give some coaching to your inside salesperson is, hey, totally get it, Lisa. Why don't we do this? You said September 1st. That's right around Labor Day. Why don't we tentatively schedule something on like the 5th or the 6th of September? And then we'll call you a little closer to confirm, because I respect your schedule.
100%.
And that way we can get something on the books. And that way we have at least an appointment time. We can always pivot later, but we've got some sort of idea when it's going to be a good time for you. If you have an idea what best time of day is and what days of the week work for you. And that will work. That is one of the best things you can do as an agent. I've done this I set an appointment like this the other day because it was an estate sale. The guy lives in D.C. He said, I'll be here after Labor Day. And I'm like, great. What days are you going to be here? And he said, I'll be here these 2 days. I'm like, you're probably going to be really busy during that time. So when would be the best time of day for us to swing by just to meet with you and give you some guidance? And he was worried about, I got to get all my parents' stuff out of there and all these other things. Yeah, you know what? We can help you with that. So it's better we come in sooner. And that way you're not worrying about having to meet with a bunch of agents when it's ready. We can have a plan to get the home on the market when it's ready a lot quicker, to make it easier for you, because you've got a lot of problems and not problems, but I think the word I used is, hey, it's a pain in the ass dealing with an estate when you're out of the area. And he goes, I get it. And it was, you have to read the situation when you say things like that. I usually keep it very professional, but that got some empathy right away, to your point. And we got an appointment booked. And then what did I do afterwards? I sent him a video. I sent him my resume. I sent him our 500 plus Google reviews and shot him a text and said, hey, check your inbox. Look forward to connecting a little closer. I'll confirm with you before Labor Day. And the response was, can't wait to talk more. Really appreciate you reaching out. This is also a lead from 2022. So to give everyone some perspective here. And it's a motivated one. Like, this thing will go on the market. So that's a great observation there. And, this kind of stuff that Lisa and I are talking about, if you want more of this, you better sign up for camp. I'm talking about BAM Camp on September 19th and 20th in Naples, Florida. Lisa and I are flying in on the BAM private jet to be there for the Knowledge Brokers panel first thing in the morning. But we've got people like Matt Leonetti, Taya DiCarlo, I'm probably butchering her name, Haley Ingram, Brooks Landry, the Massive Agent, the Broke Agent, Tom Story, Danny Deals, Dan O'Neill, and a lot more. And it's going to be a full day of how to leverage your social media, how to leverage your knowledge, like we talk about here on Knowledge Brokers, how to get more listings. Sign up in the link below. Space is limited. It's at the luxurious private club, the Tiburon, down in Naples, Byron Lazine's home golf course. We'll see you guys there. I can't wait for camp, although I will not be dressed for camp. I'll be dressed like I normally dress. You excited for BAM Camp, Lisa?
I'm excited. I also need to shout out to Danny Deals, Dan O'Neill, who our bet is coming up 4 days left, and he's ghosted.
Yeah, you know
Stopped
why?
Engaging.
I told you were going to kick his ass. I told him he made a bad bet. because the video is 100% in your control. As hard as that is to do, and I mean, we do a lot of content. That's not easy. I was in here. We got like Nick's going on vacation, and our Val, our marketing person. So I have to film all these videos, so it's all ready to go. Which is like, oh, I got to come up with more content, and then it's got to be evergreen, which is even tougher. But you can control that. What you can't control, which is his side of the bet, was getting people to sign with his team. And we talked earlier about activities, objectives, results. He bet on a result. Lisa bet on an activity, and that's 100% in your control. So way to outfox Dan O'Neill. Not hard, but congratulations anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to be stoked when he hands me over my next shiny bag.
I can't wait to see it. I don't think it's going to top the hot dog bag, Lisa. And
I don't think anything can top a wiener bag.
That was a 2-purse loss for me, because if you think it's cool getting another woman a purse and you're married, as long as I've been married, guess what? Don't be an idiot. And obviously Bridget's very happy, and Lisa and her are very good friends, so there's no question there. But Dan, at least Dan's he's got his girlfriend, so he's probably going to have to buy her a purse, I'd imagine. Byron somehow got away without buying a second bag. I don't know how he did that. I mean, that's maybe it's because they don't write love notes to each other either. I don't know. That's a whole nother thing we were talking about. So a lot of stuff to unpack in this week's episode. Lisa, you got anything else you want to add here? I feel like we talked a lot about listings. I would re-listen to this a couple times for everyone there, because if you're not focused on listings, you're not focused on building your business right now. And that was a big change for me when I was developing my career. Lisa, I know you were the same. You wouldn't leave the office until you set 2 appointments. That was your game, right? You want to explain that?
2 appointments a day. Yep. I would drop my kids off on the bus, get to the office by 8:30, and I dialed hardcore until I booked 2 appointments a day. If I've got them booked before lunch, I got to go get my nails done, meet up with friends. But if I didn't book those 2 appointments, I was there on the phones, headset on, facing my computer, making dials until 6 o'clock when I would head home to have dinner with my kids. And it was a hard commitment with myself. And it's what created the results of 2016, 82 deals in 1 year as a solo agent. Appointments.
Big numbers. Yeah. Well, appointments are the number one KPI, and you can influence those with your activities, which is what you were doing. So That all comes from Mark Roberge and the sales acceleration formula. We had the pleasure of seeing him live in Lisa's hometown of Boston a couple years ago. So
that was a good event.
That was probably him and Peter Diamandis were the best speakers I've seen at any of those sort of coaching events we've had. Obviously, independent of Tom Ferry, who is speaking at all of them, but those 2 guys. I mean, I always look at, and Mark Roberge, he's not a sales professional. He's an MIT professor, right? And he worked for HubSpot for a long time. Peter Diamandis is a wildly intelligent guy. I mean, I don't know if you listened to his podcast with Tom Bilyeu recently about AI. That was pretty fascinating. And what I look at is when you get the chance to see someone like that, it's great to go and watch. But if you don't actually take in the information they're saying and apply it to your business, that activities, objectives, results, that's one of the simplest things you're going to hear. It's probably one of the most effective for any salesperson that's out there. And we show that to everyone that joins our organization, because that's how you build a business. And that's exactly what you did. I've done the same thing. It's activities will lead to results, and you've got to hit the objectives in between. So that's how you get knowledge. That's how you get listings. Let's wrap it right there, Lisa. I think this is a pretty powerful episode. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll be back next week on the Knowledge Brokers Podcast.